What's up? I'm the Legendary Traxster, producer, songwriter, composer, executive, all those things. I've been working in a new technology called Immersive Audio. Immersive Audio is a new audio format that, instead of being limited to left, right, and center, where you can pan instruments in your composition or in your mix, it allows you to broaden the spatial positions all around you, above you, behind you. We do all types of things with audio to make it sound bigger and wider and deeper. And all of that is inherently built into immersive audio. I think it is a tremendous opportunity for producers and artists to expand their storytelling and the experiences they create for their audience. I think it's a tremendous opportunity to reimagine what music is. I kind of want to take my expertise and share some of my best practices on how I take my production and prepare it to be part of a immersive mix. For me, it goes much further than just creating stems and handing them off to a mixer. I think about it from a storytelling perspective and what experience I can give the listeners and new ways I can express or communicate my ideas through the music. So in this video, what I want to do is kind of walk you through my process, walk you through my thought process, and kind of give you some insight on what you could be doing to create immersive mixes or immersive experiences as a producer, as an artist, for the people who enjoy your music. All right, so I pulled up a session, a song called Antisocial from my group House Lindley's last album. It's a pretty simple track, but I think it's an opportunity for us to look at how I would track it out for ATMOS. So let's take a look at the tracks. First, I'll play it, and then we'll break down each track, and I'll talk about how I would track it out to have the most amount of stems to do a compelling ATMOS mix. So first, let's just listen to the track. All right, so I'm sure you guys get the idea. So let's start with the first track. I'm gonna solo it. It is a synthesizer that I played live into Ableton and did some processing and then reversed and did a bunch of stuff too. So let's just hear what that sounds like on its own. Okay, so let's talk about the processing. First in the chain, I have a UAD 1176. That's probably there to even out the low parts and the high parts. So it's a part of the track. Then after that, I have a EQ8 filtering off low end. And then after that, I have a Capital Chambers reverb. This is adding the space to the sound. And then finally, I have a delay after the reverb, which is adding more tails to the sound. So let's hear what it sounds like without these plugins on it. And I'm going to delete this decimort just because I didn't use it. So that's what it sounds like dry. So then the question I have to ask myself is, when I'm making this stem, what processing is a part of the sound, and what processing is spatial processing, or processing that I want to separate for an immersive mix? I would say that the compressor, like I said, is a part of the sound because it's evening out the lows and the highs. I think the EQ is a part of the sound because at no point am I using that low-end information, so why would I want to hand it off to somebody with that information in it? The capital chambers is a spatial effect, so is the reverb. So my thinking is, the way that I would track this out is I would do a pass as is with all the effects. Then I would do a dry pass without the reverb and without the delay. And then I would probably do a pass with just the reverb turned up to 100%. And this is what that would sound like. So then, when I'm in the, when I hand it off or I'm doing the ATMOS mix, the exact reverb I had in the sound could be positioned in a different space in the room and give a little more depth related to that sound. And then I think another stem I would make would probably be the delay turned to 100%. Now, the funny thing about that is, now that I look at it, the delay is just adding some left-right information. So on second thought, that would probably be a part of my dry pass instead of its own separate pass. But I would definitely do the reverb separately. And so I would have the full stem with all the effects, the dry stem without the reverb, and then the reverb stem. So from that one track, I would create 3 stems for the ATMOS mix. Now let's move on to the second sound in this track, which is the drums. Let's take a listen to what they sound like solo. So the first track was an audio file that I cut up and copied and pasted around the track. This is actually drums that are within a plugin called EXO. So when I look at these drums, I don't use this kick, I'm not using that, that's muted. But if you look right here, this stick is going to Effects Sends 2. And Effects Sends 2 is a ping pong delay. So if I solo that, this is what that sounds like. So it's kind of slapping around left and right. So when I track this out, there's no other effects, so I would just track out all these drums. But the other thing that is there is this crunch effect on the master bus, which is adding some grit to the drums. So I would probably do a stem with all the drums combined so that I have that crunch effect, it's called knock, imprinted on a stem with all the drums. That would be my first stem. Then I would do every drum separately, as is, going through that crunch effect. Then I would do the snare without the reverb going through that crunch effect. So it's really a stick. But that way, I would have both options if I wanted to have that delay, or if I wanted to recreate that delay after the fact. In this case, it would be hard to create a stem with 100% of that effect. But let's try it. Let's see if it's possible. So I'm gonna solo that snare, right? And even if I mute the snare, it's not a pre-fader snare, a pre-fader effect. So there's really no way to get that delay by itself. So I would have the track with the delay, the track without the delay. There is one other possibility. I could track out, let me stop this. I could track out all the drums dry, without that crunch effect on the master bus. But because that crunch effect is a part of the sound, I want all the drums to go through it. There's other cases where I might opt to have a set of stems that are don't have that effect. And really, you know, while I'm here doing it, I probably should bounce the stems without the effect. But since I'm the producer and I make the call, in this case, I'm saying I don't really think I'm gonna need those, so I'm gonna just do them through the crunch effect. All right, moving on to the next stem, there is an 808 here. So let's listen to what that sounds like. Skip ahead. Now, that 808 doesn't have any effects on it. It's just in the Ableton sampler being triggered by MIDI. In that case, I probably would just track it out dry the way it is. Maybe when I got to the DAW, I might make that a mono sound, since there's really no stereo information. But either way, the consideration for tracking that in ATMOS is basically just tracking it the way it is. In the mix, I would probably send that to the LFE though to get the maximum low end. The LFE is a channel in ATMOS or in any immersive format that just handles the lower part of the song. So there's a designated channel for, you know, low end. All right, let's move on to the vocal sample. Try to skip ahead here because it comes in at the end of the loop. All right, so on that sample, I have a tape delay that feeds into a reverb in this one plugin, and then I have a lo-fi effect, this Decimort 2. In this case, I think that the way I would track this out is I would track it out the way it is, then I would do a pass without the tape delay. Still going through the Decimort because that's the sound of the sample. You know, I intended it to sound like a lo-fi sample. And then I would do a pass turning this wet dry all the way up. Let's hear what that sounds like, so that I can have the delay separate from the original source as a separate stem. So let's recap. I would make one stem with everything together. I would make a stem without the delay, so just the source sound, and let's listen to what that sounds like first, actually. Yeah. So just the sound by itself. And then I would do that 100% version also through the lo-fi Decimort setting, so I can just have the delay separate. So that's 3 stems there, giving me more options in the mix. So let's move on to the last stem in this beat, which is a Congo, I believe. And let's hear what that sounds like. Okay, so that Congo has another instance of the capital chambers on it. The chamber is a big part of this sound, so I would definitely do a stem with it as is. Then I would probably do a dry stem just in case I wanted to recreate that reverb with an immersive reverb that's similar as an option. And then finally, I would do a version with the reverb soloed. So let's hear what that sounds like. So imagine having the Congo, you know, hit in the front of the room and then that reverb in the rear of the room. Maybe that's the way I go. Maybe I just have the reverb in the rear and the Congo with the reverb in the front. Creating these different types of stems gives me a lot of options when I'm placing it in a immersive environment. That's what really the goal of this video is to give all my producer friends out there information on how to think about tracking out the beats that you've made so that they can be more than just stems that have all this information baked in, but also give other stems that can help enhance the immersive mix. So we can go deeper into this subject because I actually now think about the way these things are processed. I think about it while I'm producing now. So, you know, I might put a reverb on a aux send instead of inline on the track so that I can have that reverb separately. But it's really what, you know, I would say just create and then figure out different ways you want to bounce these stems to give yourself the most options to create a compelling ATMOS or any format immersive mix later on.